Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so very much for joining us this cold January afternoon. My name is Rocio from SAGME, and today we have for you Michael McKeldin-Woody from International Marketing Advantages. Today he is going to present to us fewer, faster, finer, 3 keys to promotional product success. Michael, thank you so much for joining us, and I think this is our second shot. I'm going to change everything over to you, and if anyone has any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type in the questions in the question panel box. I will read them out to Michael as we go along. And here we go.
Thank you, Rocio.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, folks, for tuning in today. I've been in the promotional products business for 35 years. I spent my first 20 years with a supplier company. And then for the last 15 years, I've had my own consulting company that does strategic marketing work and merger and acquisition work. So I've seen a lot of changes during those 35 years. And most of those changes are driven by a new type of customer. I've actually written a book about that new type of customer. It'll be available on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble starting sometime next month. The name of the book's American Dragon. Yes?
Sorry, we can't see your screen yet. I don't know if you've given permission to
sorry.
show your screen. No problem.
Got it. How's that?
There you go. Excellent.
Great. Sorry, thanks, Rocio.
No problem.
So most of the distribution network are being driven by this new type of customer. And this new customer is increasingly demanding 3 things. The first is fewer. I want exactly what I want. Exactly what I want. The second is faster. I want exactly what I want, and I want it now, not tomorrow, now. The third is finer. I want exactly what I want it now, and it better be a good quality, safe product. Now, this more demanding customer is not unique to the promotional products market, just the opposite. Everyone wants fewer, faster, and finer. It's a culture change driven largely by technology. So over the next hour, we're going to take a look at some real-world examples from outside the promotional products market that illustrate the ubiquitous nature of fewer, faster, and finer. And we're going to take a look at steps that suppliers and distributors can take to align their business to service this new customer. Now, back in 1981, the supplier company I worked for had a minimum order size of 250 pieces, and this was for relatively expensive pens. Our production lead time for logoed pens was 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the type of emblem that was attached to the clip of the pen. And quality meant product quality exclusively. That is, was the mechanism scratchy? Did it work well? Did the refill work well? Now today, minimum order size is, well, you can pretty much name it. Production lead time is now 24 hours on the majority of orders for many suppliers. And I'd make the argument that lead times are actually an outmoded concept, because if one supplier can't deliver within the necessary lead time, another supplier will. And quality now means not only if the product works well or wears well, it also means that the product has been tested and it's safe. So why this dramatic change over the course of the last 35 years? Because our customer has changed. The weekend edition of the Wall Street Journal in July 2012 featured a story with the title, "The Customer as a God." Now, this article made the point that the distribution of products and services has traditionally been driven by the supply side, but technology has shifted the balance of power to the demand side. Okay, now this is not a hot news flash. We all know that technology has changed the way we go to market in this industry. But I'd submit it's done more than that. It's actually changed the way we think, particularly when it comes to our expectations and service. So what's obsolete today? What's obsolete is the concept of one size fits all. Throughout history, keep in mind that lockstep culture, that is the concept of everybody wanting and having exactly the same thing, is actually the exception. not the rule. It was the Industrial Revolution and the resulting mass urbanization that actually spawned mass media and mass culture. I mean, think of those Levittown houses after World War II that all look the same. And think of how the mass marketing of consumer products really began full force after World War II. And companies were able to scale up production and profitability by treating customers as populations, not as individuals. Companies wanted everyone to want exactly the same thing, because that's what mass marketing does. It tries to convince people, everybody, to want exactly the same thing. Well, what's trending now? What's trending now is having it your way. The internet has shifted the balance of power in favor of the customer. How? Because knowledge is power. Now, you might remember that our industry was actually built on the concept of hiding information. There was a time when I first started in the promotional products industry when distributor salespeople weren't even allowed to attend trade shows. Why was that? Well, the distributor principal didn't want the distributor salespeople to develop a direct relationship with supplier companies. There was a time when suppliers were forced to have a different line name from their company name. Again, to keep that information away from advertisers and distributor salespeople. Even the concept of pricing codes, A, B, C, D, we had those. Then when people figured that out, we switched to P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, like they couldn't figure that out. When websites first started being built, there were some distributors who were actually adamant that suppliers not build websites. So technology has exploded one of the foundations of the origin of our industry, which is hiding information. So everybody knows everything nowadays. Customer expectations have risen exponentially. And these rising expectations are forcing a transition away from mass production towards something that is called mass customization. So what does the new customer want? Well, one of the things they want is what I call fewer. As our technology-enabled awareness of the availability of products and products features expands, we're becoming more demanding. The concept of having exactly what you want, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all mentality, is becoming hardwired into our brains. The generic is no longer good enough. For even the average customer, a run-of-the-mill horse is not enough. They want a unicorn. Let's look at some examples. Now, you may recognize this iconic painting. It's Nighthawks by Edward Hopper, and it was painted in 1942. And no, we haven't switched over to an art appreciation class. But I'd ask you to look at these customers. You got 3 people, 3 coffee cups. Now take a look at what's behind the counter. You've got 2 urns, one with coffee, and the second is hot water. And why am I showing you this? Well, remember when people once walked into a diner and ordered a cup of coffee? You had basically 2 options, regular or decaf. And the server would give you the cup of coffee, and you'd add your own cream and sugar. Then came Starbucks. Starbucks is a pioneer in what is now being called mass customization, which is simply making more personal choices available to a mass market of customers. After Starbucks, a plain cup of coffee was no longer good enough, and other coffee purveyors were forced to respond. I mean, what's Dunkin' Donuts today but a working class version of Starbucks? You walk into almost any coffee shop, and the options are almost overwhelming. You got regular coffee, espresso, cappuccinos, lattes, decaf, hot or iced, all with a bunch of different flavor options. Plus you got cream, milk, skim milk, soy milk, almond milk, etc. In fact, there are now 80,000 different beverage combinations at a Starbucks store. That's quite a change from that 1942 painting. Did you know that Lay's potato chips only had 2 flavors until the late 70s? Between 1938 and 1978, barbecue was the only new flavor that Lay's introduced. Then, suddenly after the late 70s, flavor options exploded. The company recently held an online poll that allowed their customers to choose whether their next new flavor would be ginger wasabi, mango salsa, or cheddar bacon mac and cheese. So that winner will be added to options that include, of course, sour cream and onion, ranch, sea salt and vinegar, etc. In fact, there are now 54 different combinations of Lay's chips, styles, and flavors. That means in the first 40 years of their history, they had 2 flavors. In the next 40 years, they added 52 flavors. I mean, many people don't want just a plain potato chip anymore. They want their own particular flavor or a flavor that is prevalent in their local area. These are 4 new flavors that are being explored in Canada. Includes creamy garlic Caesar, grilled cheese and ketchup, maple mousse, and pierogi with bacon and onions. So again, we don't just want a standard potato chip. We want our potato chip. We want something that that appeals distinctly to our own palate. Remember when this bud was for you and just about everyone else? Well, today, the major brewers are hastily attempting to acquire craft breweries. Why is that? Well, simply look at this chart. It shows the sale of Budweiser versus craft beers since 2003. As of 2013, the sale of craft beers, which of course are produced mostly by small local breweries, and they're consumed by those who have a passion for something local, has actually surpassed sales of the king of beers. And catering to individual preferences is even becoming a standard solution to perk up tired brands. What's McDonald's solution to its recent financial doldrums? Well, they shook up their predictable menu in an attempt to attract younger customers. They launched a new program last year called Create Your Taste. It was rolled out to roughly 1 in 7 locations last year. Customers order burgers from touchscreens. They choose from different options, including the type of bun, the sauce, the toppings. Then they sit down and they have the order delivered to their table. It's basically an updated and expanded version of the Burger King Have It Your Way campaign that revolutionized fast food several decades ago. And McDonald's is also offering breakfast all day to cater to those with those odd schedules and those mostly younger people who simply like breakfast at any time of the day. So with the launch of these 2 initiatives, the company's fortunes are rebounding. Why is that? Because they are catering to the customer as a god and the demand for mass customization. Enough about the Fuhrer principle in food. Let's take a look at music. If you're a baby boomer like me, you recall putting on a record album and listening to songs you didn't particularly care for because you had to hear every single song on the album side in order to hear the ones you really liked, unless you wanted to go to the trouble of picking up the needle and moving it to the desired track. Well, now we create our own digital music playlists, and we listen only to the songs we love. And Google recently announced the launch of a music subscription service that anticipates your mood and plays what it thinks you will want to hear based on your past habits and the time of day or the venue. So, not only do you now have the option of listening only to the songs you love, but this service actually anticipates and plays those songs you may want to hear at a particular time of day based on how you're feeling. Let's look at the Fuhrer principle in the world of apparel. Ever been frustrated by the inconsistent sizing of off-the-rack shirts? Well, several years ago, Kirk Keel was embarrassed when his date commented on his ill-fitting button-down shirt. Tired of spending big money on brand-name shirts that didn't fit his body type, Keel founded the Stant Shirt Company. Now, Stant shirts come in 75 sizes. And to determine which size is the best fit for you, you simply take 3 body measurements, your arm length, your waist, and your chest. You email them the measurements, and they'll match you up with the appropriate size. But the customization of clothing doesn't stop there. There's an inventor by the name of Joshua Harris who's working on a clothing printer that would allow you to create your own t-shirt at home, style to your exact body type. And when the garment begins to get a little ragged, you simply load it back into the printer, it breaks down the thread, and you can use it in a new shirt. Now, speaking of printers, let's look at the concept of 3D printing. Amara's law states that we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. So it was with the birth of the internet, and so it will be with the proliferation of 3D printing. 3D printing is the most extreme manifestation of the Fuhrer principle in action. 3D printers, of course, allow the user to manufacture one custom piece. They've actually been in use in industrial environments for decades, primarily for creating prototypes. However, over the last 5 years, prices for these machines have plummeted. So worldwide shipments of 3D printers will reach 200,000 units last year. It's expected to double every year for the next 3 years, and by 2018 there's expected to be 2.3 million 3D printers out there. Now Nike, again, these 3D printers have traditionally been used by large manufacturers to speed up the product development process. But they're nearer to making the leap to consumer products than many people think. Nike has used 3D printing to create custom sports bags, and they're now making hyper-customized running shoes. Some promotional product suppliers now have 3D printers. And I know of one distributor who has a 3D printer. He sold 100 personalized key tags that he made on that printer. His gross margin for the order was 300%. Excuse me. Even food companies are exploring innovative ways to use 3D printing. Let's say it's your anniversary, you're taking your spouse out for dinner, and you want the chef to serve pasta in the shape of a rose. So you simply bring the rose design on a USB drive and you hand it to your waiter, who passes it along to the chef. She installs the drive onto a 3D printer and serves the dish in 20 minutes, pasta shaped like a rose. Now that seems far-fetched, but the global pasta company Barilla is currently working with a research organization to design a machine that will do precisely that. So 3D printers have a synergistic relationship with this burgeoning consumer desire for more customized products, and they reinforce the importance of the fewer principle. They are here to stay. 3D printers are increasingly going to be a part of the promotional products industry, and they're not going to be used merely for prototypes. They're going to be used for production runs. It may not be next year, but it will be within the next 5 to 10 years. You may remember, everyone remembers this famous Henry Ford quote: "Any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants, so long as it's black." Ford was actually being a little facetious at the time. What he was trying to do was make a point to his salespeople who were constantly looking for new products and features to sell. So it was that age-old conflict between production and sales. This is what Ford actually wrote at the time. He says the salesmen were spurred by the great sales to think that even greater sales might be had if only we had more models. It's strange how just as soon as an article becomes successful, somebody starts to think it would be more successful if only it were different. Salesmen always want to cater to whims instead of acquiring sufficient knowledge of their product to be able to explain to the customer with a whim that what they have will satisfy his every requirement. Therefore, he announced at a meeting one morning in 1909 that they were only going to make one model, the Model T. The chassis would be the same for all cars, and then he made the famous quote, "Any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants as long as it's black." But the customer as a god in today's world has proven that Henry Ford has lost that battle. Personal whim will increasingly dominate new product development. Another example is Local Motors. They're based in Phoenix. At the January 2015 North American Auto Show, they unveiled a 3D printed car that can be made in 40 hours. And their CEO noted that 95% of the volume of the car is 3D printed. So it's apparent that Local Motors is eventually going to offer car buyers the option of a customized body design. You can even customize the number and type of seats, the trunk size. Now, it's going to be a little while before these vehicles are deemed safe for normal road conditions, but time is the only obstacle. Cable bundling. I've always been frustrated by the way cable TV companies force you to buy a bundle of channels rather than allowing you to pick the specific channels that you want. If I want to watch old films on Turner Classic Movies, I shouldn't I shouldn't be forced to pay for 20 other channels that I don't want to watch. However, it's only a matter of time, and by time I mean only it's months probably, before I get what I want. Because the cable TV business model of selling bundle packages of channels is doomed to fail in this new environment. The technology of internet-delivered TV programming is swamping the argument of whether cable operators ought to bundle or unbundle the cable channels. So it won't be long before you're going to be able to pick exactly the channels you want to see. The cable bundle is basically dead. Now, in his book, The Long Tail, this is a great book. If you get a chance, pick it up. The author is Chris Anderson, and he wrote about how the widespread availability of information over the internet is tearing down mass culture and driving the importance of the fewer principle. In his book, Anderson stresses the revolutionary effect of the reality that if you want something rare or unique, there's a good chance you can find it on the internet. This means that instead of buying what mass marketing endorses, individuals are now in search of what uniquely pleases them. A recent article in Industry Week characterized this trend as the consumerization of manufacturing. Driven by the consumer demand for more customized products, retailers struggling to keep up are putting pressure on manufacturers to deliver more customized formulations, packages, and configurations for all types of products. So, can distribution networks as currently constructed satisfy the customer as a god? What must suppliers and distributors do to thrive in this environment where people constantly want a product that's more customized? Interesting note too on this, and this just happened today. I had a distributor friend of mine call me and say that he had a request for a smart water bottle that would gauge how much water the person drank, and it would tell the person basically whether or not they need to drink more water at particular times of day. So that's how customized things are becoming. So remember, fewer principle is I want what is new, I want what is unique, I want what is customized and personalized. So how do I implement the fewer principle in my own business? Number one, you're going to have to remain profitable on ever smaller orders. The average order size in this distribution network is shrinking, and it will continue to shrink. So you must remain profitable on smaller orders. For suppliers, this is a particular problem because many of the large orders are now being shopped directly overseas. So the amount of work that a supplier has to do is the same, and their costs are going up, but their average order size in this industry is not increasing. If you adjusted it for inflation, it's probably dropped. So as a network, we have to find a way to remain profitable on ever smaller orders. To do that, we need to remove friction from the order process. In many respects, other than the delivery of the order itself, and I can remember the days when we used to receive orders in the mail, we're still processing orders the same way. So it is important that it's very important that complete order information be transmitted back and forth in order to keep this process friction-free. And distributors should note those suppliers and product types that have flexibility on minimal order quantities. So if you're a distributor, you really want to key in on small order, find suppliers who can deal with very, very small orders, specifically for those products that are the key products in the industry. And suppliers should be very careful about investing in any long-run equipment with slow setups and teardowns, because that makes it very expensive to do a short order run. So suppliers should focus on, if they're looking at an investment in plant and equipment, will it allow me to make a smaller order? If it allows you to make a smaller order, then it's worth looking at more so than if it's something that has very slow setup and tear down times, takes a long time to run. Let's take a look at the FASTER principle. FASTER principle states we want exactly what we want, but we want it exactly when we want it. Now we're I think, very in tune with this in the promotional products business. What we want exactly when we want it. We don't want it next week. We don't want it tomorrow. We want it now. Some examples of what's happening out there that's driving this. In December 2013, remember when Jeff Bezos was on a 60-minute segment with being interviewed by Charlie Rose. And the highlight of that interview was Jeff Bezos' revelation that Amazon is exploring the feasibility of using drones to deliver products to its customers. So why drones? Well, they want to reduce the time they want to reduce the time between when a customer places an order and when they receive it. One day is not fast enough. 6 hours isn't fast enough. They want to deliver it in 30 minutes. And the segment also noted that Amazon is continuing to build additional distribution centers to get closer to the consumer to ensure ever quicker delivery. So both this drone project and the proliferation of distribution centers are examples of Amazon's focus on what Jeff Bezos calls customer centricity. And Charlie Rose described it as part of what Amazon customers expect. We want it now. And I'm sure all of you out there deal with customers every day who want it now. Now, by April 2015, the U.S. Postal Service had then announced that they were experimenting with an 8-rotor drone called the Horsefly as a means for speeding up delivery. So basically the postal van becomes an aircraft carrier for all these drones that use GPS tracking to figure out the shortest route to the delivery target, drop the package, and return to the van. So Charlie Rose was right in that 60-minute segment. We want it now, and all supply chains, including our own, are going to be forced to adapt to this ever more demanding customer imperative. Now, just an example of how, and I'm not just talking about our customer, I'm talking about us, because we're all this way. I was online the other day. I couldn't remember the name of the piano player on one of my favorite albums, Kinda Blue. It's a Miles Davis album, 1958. So I typed in a search button, it hit the enter button. There were 2 million results that popped up. So I clicked on one of those results, and that small circle started to spin on that tab at the top of my screen. After 3 seconds, I couldn't take it anymore. So I went back, clicked on another result, and I got the name of Wynton Kelly, who played piano on that record. Total amount of time to get my answer was 5 seconds. But it could have been 2 seconds if not for that small spinning circle. So admit it. When you're online, if you click on something and that circle spins around the tab, you get agitated and anxious, don't you? It's because you want your answer now. 5 seconds is too long to wait. When I was a youngster, if I wanted to know the answer to that same question, I'd have to walk or drive to the nearest record store or library and look up the information. Probably would have taken me 2 hours to get an answer. But today, when that little blue circle spins more than 3 seconds, I'm looking for a different search result, or I'm moving to a different screen. See, technology is driving this need for immediacy. You know, it was once predicted that technological improvements would actually add to our leisure time. In fact, the opposite has occurred, because as technology has made us more productive, the time gained has not been converted to leisure time, but time to do more work. Am I not right? Especially, you know, in 200 families, we're now busier than we ever have been. If something takes too long nowadays, we don't wait. We move on to the next thing. So our attention spans have dissipated. I mean, TV remote control has turned us into channel surfers. You know, when you had to get up and actually change the channel, there was no such thing as channel surfing. Now we focus on a program for only a few seconds. And if that show doesn't engage us or satisfy us, we move along to the next channel. Who knows? We might be missing something riveting on one of those 200 other channels. So our attention spans get shorter and shorter. I mean, Joan Rivers used to tell the joke about Elizabeth Taylor being the only person who stands in front of a microwave shouting, "Hurry up!" Well, nowadays, that's all of us. And just to emphasize our obsession with speed when it comes to food, you know the difference in cooking time between traditional oatmeal and instant oatmeal? 4 minutes. There's only a 4-minute difference. Yet we had to create instant oatmeal because it took us 5 minutes to cook regular oatmeal. On top of that, and I'm sure you've all seen this, the development of smartphones and iPads means that we're now digitally connected 24 hours a day. When we leave work, we're still working. Now, as a baby boomer, I always tried to maintain a division between work time and play time. I do work things when I'm working and play things when it's playtime. And I've always attempted to keep those two from intersecting. But digital technology obliterates that barrier between work time and playtime. For younger people who grew up with smartphones, I think there's little distinction between work time and playtime. There's an education consultant, his name is Mark Prensky, and you may have heard this before, but he memorably defined this distinction between generations as the difference between digital immigrants, as people like me, and digital natives who grew up with internet technology. So largely because of social media, your customers and coworkers are now online friends who are posting 24 hours a day. If you want to keep up, you better stay connected. Now, I'm not saying this is good or it's bad. I'm only saying it's a fact of life. And this technology-driven need for immediacy is becoming hardwired into our mentality. Here's a family dinner, what a family dinner looked like in 1960, roughly. Notice people looking at each other, engaged. You even have that guy in the bottom right-hand corner there looking back at the person taking the picture. Everybody recognizes this, right? This is today's family dinner. People on their smartphones, people not engaged with each other. Why? Because they have such a dissipated attention span, so many people trying to get in touch with them that they can't focus on the here and now. So this isn't just, again, this isn't about just our customers, because this is about all of us. We'll skip the fast fashion thing. One brief thing about fast fashion. Fast fashion is a way to knock off what they basically apparel companies knock off runway new designs off runways, and they try to get it into stores in 3 to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks from one way to the stores. And again, that's the kind of thing that's driving distribution networks today. And these are global distribution networks, and they're doing that in 3 to 4 weeks. So any amount of friction that slows down the speed of a supply chain has a cost. And that cost rises as the degree of friction rises. Now, some of you folks may remember the West Coast port shutdown. It was like the end of 14 and the beginning of 2015. And talks dragged on for months between the union and the people that were running the port, created massive backlogs of imports on container ships off the West Coast. Now, that strike was eventually settled after government intervention. But the backlog of goods bound for factories and stores took months to dissipate, literally months. It left a lot of importers, including a lot of promotional product suppliers, scrambling for alternate sources. So what must I do to thrive in this new environment and deal with the faster principle? Remember, the faster principle means we not only want exactly what we want it now. And if you can't give it to me when I want it, someone else will. First thing is act as though lead times do not exist, because they truly don't exist anymore. As a matter of fact, I've told many suppliers, suggested to many suppliers, and I'm waiting for the first one to actually do this, to publish a catalog with no lead times and just say that the lead time is whenever the customer wants it. Because in reality, that's what's happening in this distribution network. Most suppliers are delivering when the customer wants it anyway. So as both distributors and suppliers, we need to start to act as though lead times do not even exist. You have to keep in mind that social media is blurring the line between work and play. And that's something, especially someone who's a baby boomer like me, has to remember. And distributors and suppliers must respond immediately. Not tomorrow, immediately. One thing that this network can do, and I talked about this earlier when I talked about the flow of orders, I said we're delivering orders faster to the supplier, but we're still not providing complete order information on an order-by-order basis. And that just slows things down. I work with a lot of suppliers. I've seen it at a lot of supplier operations. The back and forth that goes on now between a supplier and a distributor is the same back and forth that went on in 1984. So again, as business partners, we have to find a way to solve that problem. Suppliers with 2 or 3 shift capability actually will have an advantage because that will allow them to ship more quickly. It's much easier if you receive an order at 2 p.m. in the afternoon and you have a second and or a third shift. It's a lot easier to ship it tomorrow than if you shut down at 5 o'clock and open up again tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. But one thing to note about that, it creates a bias toward larger suppliers. And in my overview of the business, what I'm seeing out there is that a lot of smaller suppliers are hurting a little bit. And they're hurting a little bit because they're trying to deal with the shifts that we're seeing in this customer type. They're trying to deal with fewer and they're trying to deal with faster. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about how they're trying to deal with finer and why that's a problem, a little bit of a problem for smaller suppliers and not as much of a problem for larger suppliers. Let's take a look at the finer principle. Finer principle states, I want exactly what I want, exactly when I want it, and it better be good, and it better be safe. So there's probably no industry like the promotional products industry that has such a great grasp of the importance of product quality and safety. Our trade association, PPAI, does a tremendous job in educating our distribution network on the importance of product safety and how to be certain that those products that get into the advertisers' hands and their customers' hands are safe. But I want to spend just a few minutes now going back, looking at a little bit of history of how product safety became so essential to the definition of a finer product. It all started back in 2004. That was when the California Department of Public Health distributed 300,000 lunch boxes to children throughout the state. They were trying to promote for the kids to eat fresh fruits and vegetables. 1/3 of those were supplied by TA Creations, a Los Angeles company that had imported the products from China. 2 years later, a spot check by Sacramento County Lab discovered that those lunch boxes contained lead levels significantly above the legal limit set by California Proposition 65. So all 300,000 lunch boxes were recalled, and TA Creations was eventually slapped with a $10 million fine. That was the largest legal judgment against an offender up to that time. So why is Proposition 65 so important? Proposition 65 is so important not only because of the increased levels. It became more stringent in terms of what you could bring into this country as far as lead levels, etc. It was also because for the first time the burden was placed on companies, not the government, to ensure that they were selling products that complied with official limits on hazardous chemicals. Before it was kind of like, well, if the government didn't catch you, everything was fine. Now, if you don't self-report, you can get yourself in trouble, serious trouble. So, Prop 65 was, of course, a challenge for U.S. suppliers and distributors because we suddenly had to comply with more stringent safety regulations in California than in the rest of the country. So back then, before then, many suppliers in our industry were simply shopping product off the shelf of a trade show booth of a China manufacturer or an agent in Hong Kong. they may never have even taken the time to actually visit the factory where the products were manufactured. Never inspected the materials going into the products they were importing from China, never saw the conditions in the factories. They were basically buying from China like you'd buy a can of peas off the shelf of a grocery store, and they simply assumed the products were safe. But Prop 65 changed all that. Then 3 years after this lunchbox controversy, in 2007, June of 2007 actually, the New York Times reported that all of the 24 toys recalled by the Consumer Product Safety Commission since the beginning of that year had been manufactured in China. And 2 months later, Mattel recalled 1 million toys, all of them manufactured in China, because of excessive lead levels. So all these high-profile recalls by Mattel grabbed the attention of the media. And of course, then it got the attention of the federal and state legislators, and most importantly, the Consumer Product Safety Commission. But before the furor over these toy recalls died down, executives at the Sanlu Group in China, that's the largest producer of powdered milk over there, discovered that some of their products were laced with melamine. That's a chemical that's used to produce plastic and fertilizer. It was apparently added to the milk powder, not accidentally, but purposely, to boost the measurable protein content of the product. However, the Beijing Olympics were coming up in a matter of days, so the company decided to bury this news for 5 weeks because they wanted to prevent any sort of embarrassing revelation during the games. So they continued to sell this product for consumption by infants. So 6 babies died from kidney stones and other kidney damage, and 800 babies were hospitalized. 2 people were eventually executed for this, and 3 were sent to prison for life. So you'd think that would be the end of the possibility of finding melamine in powdered milk in China, right? Not so much. In late 2010 and early 2011, packets of melamine-tainted powdered milk were again found on store shelves in China, and incredibly, some of that product seized during the 2008 scandal had actually been reused and put back on retail shelves 3 years later. So largely as a result of this uproar over the Mattel recalls and the tainted milk scandal, the Consumer Product Safety Commission passed CPSIA in 2008. The CPSIA, that law was a direct response to those recalls. Now, okay, what does tainted milk and Mattel toy recalls have to do with the promotional products industry? Why is that so important? Well, obviously, not because 95% of the hard goods in this industry, 95%, are made in China. Please keep in mind that all it would take is one highly publicized product safety scare from a promotional product to bring this industry to its knees. All it would take is one supplier, one distributor to make a big mistake, and it would not just affect their business. It would affect the business of almost everyone in this industry. And it's not only China manufacturers, by the way, who have been in the glare of the spotlight. As far as apparel go, that's also been a big issue as far as supply chain transparency. And in November 2012, a fire broke out at an apparel factory in Dhaka, Bangladesh. 117 people killed. Fire was caused by an electrical short circuit on the first floor, and people on the upper floors couldn't get out. The only way to get out was to get down to the first floor. So people were trapped in the upper floors. And of course, the large amounts of fabric and yarn fed the fire. Exits were too narrow for people to escape. 12 people actually leapt to their death from windows on the upper floors. Then 4 months later, the Rana Plaza building, it's an 8-story garment factory, also in Dhaka, Bangladesh, collapsed, killed over 1,100. And there had been warnings to avoid using the building after cracks were discovered the day before the tragedy. Those warnings were ignored, and the workers were ordered to return to work the next day. So, Imagine if you're a distributor and your customer one day walks out of her office to her car and she's confronted by 60 Minutes correspondent Steve Croft. He shoves a microphone in her face and asks her whether she knows that the promotional product she is currently distributing has twice the allowable CPSC lead limits, and whether she understands the danger this poses to children. Or perhaps the promotional product was produced in a factory with unsafe working conditions, or was produced in a factory with prison labor. In either case, there's simply no graceful way to deal with the scenario. If you're a distributor or supplier involved in this type of situation, it can kill your business. And not just your business, it can kill the business of a lot of your colleagues in the promotional products market. So given the widespread use of social media to publicize these types of tragic events, making and or selling a finer product is essential in the promotional products industry today. So what must I do to thrive? How do I deal with this customer who wants a finer product? Remember the finer principle: make and sell good quality, safe product, or play Russian roulette with your business and the business of everybody else in the industry. First, quality is very important, always has been, but product safety is essential. You can't whistle past the graveyard on these things. It is just essential. CPS is increasingly essential. I know suppliers who, especially, again, smaller suppliers, and this issue is a very difficult issue for smaller suppliers. If you're a big company, a big supplier company, you can afford to hire a compliance director. If you're a small supplier, you can't afford to do that. So you have to be very careful. It's more expensive for a smaller supplier to deal with this issue as a percentage of their total sales. But still, suppliers can't whistle past the graveyard and act as though, well, I'm not going to really deal with that. I'm just gonna keep doing what I always did. That's not an option nowadays. Distributors, know who the QCA suppliers are. Research those suppliers that take this issue seriously and make sure you got them on your list of viable supplier companies to deal with. Those distributors who direct source, and a lot of distributors are doing that nowadays, be very, very careful. Good way to, all it takes is one order. All it takes is one order to kill your business. By the way, PPAI's turbo test application, if you're not familiar with that, you really need to get on PPAI's website and check that out. It's a product safety roadmap. It guides you step by step through a process that identifies the appropriate compliance testing and standards required for literally thousands of products. My friend Rick Brenner, who's CEO of Prime, and he just finished his stint as chairman of the board of PPAI, he blogs a lot on product compliance issues. He agrees that PPAI is an invaluable resource. However, Rick also recommends, if you're a supplier, that once you've determined your product is subject to CPSIA guidelines, that you contact a good product safety attorney and initiate regular reviews, either quarterly or semi-annually, to discuss three things. One, what's changed in your business that involves product safety regulations. Two, what will change in the regulatory environment that might affect your business. And three, what potential product compliance issues are down the road. So again, I can't stress strongly enough how important this issue is. The product safety issue is not going away, and I know our association is doing a tremendous job, and I think our industry in general is doing a very good job. But I think we have to be ever diligent, because all it would take, again, is one segment on 60 Minutes. It'd bring this industry to its knees. So I want to emphasize that fewer, faster is here to stay. There's no turning back. Your customer tomorrow is not suddenly going to say, no, I don't want it faster anymore, I want it slower. They're not going to say, well, I'm going to stop ordering small orders now. I'm going to start ordering larger orders. Same thing with the safety thing. So there's no turning back on these fewer, faster, and finer principles. Millennials, and these are people born between 1982 and 2000, they are the largest generation ever. And they aren't as obsessed with labels or mass marketing hype as prior generations. Millennials show more of a tendency to buy from smaller, more local makers whose business practicals they consider above ethical reproach, and that's part of that finer principle. And they like products made in smaller batches. That's the fewer principle. So if your business and our distribution network in general is going to continue to grow, we must increasingly focus on those three principles of fewer, faster, and finer. So I want to thank you for spending some time with me today. I'm happy to answer any questions. Of course, I've been in the industry for a long time. A lot of people have my contact information, but my email address is michael.woody@imadvantages.com. Feel free to contact me via email. And I'd just like to thank you again for spending some time with me today.
Thank you, Michael, for that extremely informative webinar. I certainly found it very, very informative. We always are looking to do the right thing for ourselves and for our customers. This session has been recorded for anyone who wants to go back and take a look and make notes. I also have Michael's contact information if you wish to get in touch with him later. If a question pops up, feel free to contact me or Michael directly. You have his email address there. Michael will be at the Expo East in Atlantic City in March, right, Michael?
Yes, I will.
Okay, and as he told me yesterday, he's also going to be at the Tun Tavern at a regional member meet and greet at the Tun Tavern again at the Atlantic City Convention Center on the 16th of March. We look forward to seeing you guys there. Michael, thank you again.
We're bringing our band, the Midnight Soul Patrol, so we are the entertainment. So
yeah, you guys are the entertainment.
make sure you come to that regional reception at Tun Tavern during Expo East.
Yes, absolutely. Do make sure to come by, say hi to Michael as he's, and we look forward to making more connections and learning more. Again, Michael, thank you so much for this informative session. Everyone, thank you all so much for joining us during your lunch hour or for this 1 hour. We wish you nothing but a safe travel time wherever you guys are going, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay?
Thanks, Lucia.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mike.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Good luck. Bye.
Bye-bye.